first reading this morning in the Old Testament is from Psalms 131. If you'd like to follow along, Psalm 131 of David. My heart is not proud, O Lord. My eyes are not haughty. I do not concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me, but I have stilled and quieted my soul. Like a weaned child with its mother, like a weaned child is my soul within me. O Israel, put your hope in the Lord, both now and forevermore. The gospel reading this morning is from the book of John, chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. Please rise in honor of the gospel if you're able. That's John 2, 1 through 12. Jesus changes water into wine. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Dear woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied. "My time has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water, they knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now." This, the first of his miraculous signs, Jesus performed at Cana in Galilee. He thus revealed his glory, and his disciples put their faith in him. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
Wash between your toes? Why do you suppose she needed to tell you that? The things moms say. I got some mom jokes, which are really dad jokes, but I'm telling them on Mother's Day. But they kind of have the ring of dad jokes. When a child refuses to take a nap, are they guilty of resisting a rest? A mother cow after giving birth is now decaffeinated. A mother says to their kid, "Don't make fun of me for not knowing how to use my phone. I remember when you didn't know how to use a spoon." You know, it's not easy being a mother. If it were, dads would do it. Cleaning with your children in the house is like brushing your teeth and eating Oreos at the same time. I experienced that twice this week. Yeah, you make no headway. When your first child comes along and they eat dirt, a mom calls the doctor. By the time their second child comes along and eats dirt, the mom just rinses out their mouth. When the third child comes along and eats dirt, the mom says, "Thank goodness I don't have to make lunch." They say silence is golden, but when you have kids, silence is suspicious, very suspicious. My mom taught me about faith. She would say, I can remember her saying, "You had better pray that that spot comes out of the carpet." And she also taught me about contradiction. She would say, "Shut your mouth and eat your dinner." A mom and a dad were watching TV, and the mom said, "I'm tired. It's getting late. I'm going to go to bed." She went to the kitchen and made sandwiches for the next day's lunches, rinsed out the dishes, took meat out of the freezer for supper the following evening, checked the cereal for breakfast in the morning, put bowls and spoons on the table, started the coffee pot for brewing. She put some wet clothes in the dryer, threw a load of clothes in the wash, ironed a shirt, secured a loose button. She picked up game pieces that were left on the table, put the telephone on the charger. She watered the plants, emptied a wastebasket, hung up a towel to dry, yawned and stretched, headed to the bedroom, but she stopped by the desk, wrote a note to the teacher, counted out cash for school lunch, pulled a textbook that was underneath a chair. She signed a birthday card for a kid's friend. She addressed it, dropped it in her purse. She went over her shopping list quickly. Then she went to the bathroom, washed her face with 3-in-1 cleanser, put on her night cream and moisturizer, brushed and flossed her teeth, filed her nails. Dad helpfully yells from the couch, "I thought you were going to bed." "I'm on my way," she says. She puts some water in the dog's dish. She puts the cat outside, makes sure the doors are locked. She looked in on each of the kids, turned off their lights, hung up a shirt, threw some dirty socks in the hamper, had a brief conversation with one kid who was doing homework. In her bedroom, she sets the alarm, lays out clothing for the next day, straightens up the shoe rack, adds 3 things to her to-do list, says her prayers, and gets in bed. About that time, the dad says to no one in particular, "I'm going to bed." And he does. I think the moral of that story is dads are much more efficient than moms. He got right there. No problem. No problem. A lot of things, I'm off script now, but a lot of things, drive Carrie crazy about me. But one thing is, I can get up from the TV and I see nothing that needs to be done. Like nothing that needs to be done between the TV and the bedroom, Today is Mother's Day, a day we remember and celebrate our mothers. Mothers play such an important role in our lives and the lives of their children and the lives of a family. But of course, mothers are broken humans like everyone else. So that can mean a lot of complications for folks on Mother's Day. Maybe your mother was a very broken person and the pain of that relationship is stronger that you recall than the good. Maybe your experience of being a mother has been tough or was good but is tough now. And maybe your mother is no longer with us on this earth, so it brings up a lot of grief this day. We're going to spend a bit of time today thinking about motherhood, and we're going to look at Mary, the mother of Jesus. I was hesitant to do this because the last thing moms need is more pressure, and I'm not trying to say you should be like Mary or that your child should be like Jesus. But I was thinking about Mother's Day sermon, and I thought it would just be interesting to look at every interaction that Mary had with Jesus and kind of see what we can see in that. So really, it's just some lessons from that, and I think really just an affirmation for you moms, because I know a lot of you do a lot of these things that I'm going to mention. So we're going to look at a few lessons from Mary. First lesson that we learned from Mary about motherhood is that when you're very pregnant, you should go for a long ride on a donkey. That must have been a great experience for Mary. Dylan was born on January the 4th, and Easton was born on January 13th. We wanted both of them to be born in December because we had maxed out our deductible. The only thing better than a healthy kid is a free healthy kid. And we tried everything we could to get them to come out, but they didn't. We should have tried riding on a donkey, I guess. Jesus came along. In the Gospel of Luke, to back it up a little bit, in the Gospel of Luke chapter 2, we read that an angel of the Lord showed up to Mary, telling her she'll give birth to a son who will be called Jesus. And he will be the Son of God and will take over David's kingdom, and he's going to rule forever. We're also told that Mary had found favor with God. And she responds to these words from the Lord through the angel, "I am the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled." We see in Mary's finding favor with the Lord and in her humble response that she was faithful to God. The most important thing for mothers is your own faith in God. A mother's faith in God will influence how you parent, what you pass on to your kids, what they see you doing and how you do it. There's so much mothers want to do for their kids, whatever their age, and so much that they wish for their kids, whatever their age. But the only thing that will last is their faith. And the most impactful way to pass this on is your own faith. In Luke 2:15, we read, "When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another," so the angels had come down and had told them that the Son of God had been born. And so they say, "Let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about." So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger. When they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told them about this child. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. Mary was watching, seeing how people were reacting to the birth of Jesus. She held on to these, storing them up in her heart, wondering what it all meant. Mothers see the potential in their kids, and they hold hopes and dreams for them. After the birth of Jesus, the next event recorded in Luke is when Jesus is 12 and they go up to the festival of the Passover, and Jesus stays behind to talk with the religious leaders in the temple courts. For a couple of days, Jesus' parents just think he is in their group. The group had left from Jerusalem and was heading back. They thought he was just in with this group, but then they realize he's not, and they go back to try to find him, and they find him in the temple courts. So we read this in verse 48. When his parents saw him, they were astonished. His mother said to him, "Son, why have you treated us like this? Your father and I have been anxiously searching for you." "Why were you searching for me?" he asked. "Didn't you know that I had to be in my father's house?" But they did not understand what he was saying to them. Then he went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. But his mother treasured all these things in her heart. At first, Mary, the mom, has a mom response. "Why did you stress us out?" Meaning, why did you stay back in Jerusalem? You weren't with us and with our party. My mom's words would have been, "Oh, my nerves, you're standing on the last one," is how she would have said it. And we're told again in verse 51, but his mother treasured all these things in her heart. Mary thought a lot about Jesus, spent a lot of time wondering and pondering about Jesus. Mothers do that. Think, wonder, pray about their kids. See in their kids their potential and what they might become. Be their cheerleader, no matter their age. The next account we have of Jesus and his mother is in John chapter 2. This is what Becky read for us earlier, where Jesus turns the water into wine. I'm just going to reread the first few verses of that. So verse 1. On the third day, a wedding took place in Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied. "My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." I think this is an interesting and maybe humorous interaction between Jesus and his mom. Jesus is the Son of God. Through Jesus, everything was created and everything is held together. Yet his mom tells him they have no more wine, and he knows exactly what she means, and he's like, "Not my circus, not my monkey. This is not my problem." And what does she do? She blows right through that boundary and says, "You're going to do it, and you're going to do it now," basically. And just do whatever he tells you. In other words, Jesus listened to his mom, and he's Almighty God. Point is, if your child thinks they run the world, remind them that you are their mother, that even Jesus listens to their mother. Dylan is the typical older child, and he believes in rules and authority, and he gets that. It came naturally to him, as it does with a lot of older kids. Easton's the typical younger child. He questions all the time why we get to make up the rules. Like, why doesn't he get to make up the rules? And we tell him the standard line that parents say, "Because we're your parents." He doesn't like that explanation. Anyway, Jesus listened to Mary. Also, Mary in this situation, she noticed a real human need, a social need. It would have been shameful for these folks to run out of wine at their wedding. And she intercedes and she nudges Jesus to do something about it because she knows he can. Now, we have no idea what Jesus was doing in his teen years. It would be great to know those kind of things. But for some reason, she knew Jesus can do this. He can take care of it. And she nudged him to do something good and right because he could. Earlier this week, we got down to a Cornerstone, and I had Dylan and Easton and Ada Rose in our car, and it had rained, and we got out, and there was worms all over the parking lot, and they ran around rescuing all the worms and picking them up, throwing them in the grass to save their lives. I did not teach them that. I would only pick up worms to use them for trout bait, would be the only reason I would pick them up. But they were, somebody had taught them, and then the principal affirmed their goodness. Mary, the mother of Jesus, believed in him and that he could and should help, and she gives him a nudge. Sometimes moms need to give their kids a nudge when they see they have an opportunity to do something good. Mary makes a couple of backstage appearances on the fringes of Jesus' ministry, but we don't see much of her until the cross. And what was probably one of the most painful experiences for a parent to endure, she was present when her son was crucified. John 19:25. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to her, "Woman, here is your son." And to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, the disciple took her into his home. Mary was at the cross, but she was silent. But she was present, powerfully present. She was standing by her son as he had to go through what he had to go through. Sometimes as a mother, all you can do, and perhaps all you should do, is be present as your child goes through something that they need to go through. Just being there means a lot to them. Looking at Mary at the wedding to Mary at the cross, we see early on Mary seemed to have lots of ideas, hopes, and dreams for Jesus. And then it appears she learned the Father's will for his life, and she surrendered to that. Sometimes part of mothering is understanding the path God has for your child, and it may be different than the one that you have. After the ascension of Jesus, after Jesus goes back up to heaven, in Acts 1, verse 12, we read this. Then the apostles returned to Jerusalem and the hill called the Mount of Olives, a Sabbath day walk from the city. When they arrived, they went upstairs to the room where they were staying. Those present were Peter, John, James, Andrew, Philip, and Thomas, Bartholomew, and Matthew, James, son of Alphaeus, and Simon the Zealot, and Judas, son of James. They all joined together constantly in prayer along with the women and Mary, the mother of Jesus, and with his brothers. Mary, Jesus' mother, joined constantly in prayer after he had left and returned to heaven. Another lesson we learn from Mary is praying for your child. If there's nothing else you do for them, praying for them is of ultimate importance. I know so many things in my life happened because of my mother's prayers. So for mothers, again, kind of some reminders from today from Mary. Your own faith is very important. Be your child's cheerleader, seeing in them what they can become, no matter what their age. When your child has opportunity and ability to do something good, maybe sometimes you need to give them a nudge. Be present when they're going through what they need to go through. Understand that God has a plan for your child, and it may not be your plan. And pray for your kids. Let us pray.